Hi everyone, this is Maya, and I can't quite call it a book review because I always wait. I always try to let a book marinate in my head before I review it. Um, but I just finished this book and I need to unpack this. I just finished All Is Forgotten, Nothing Is Lost by Samantha Chang, Lan Samantha Chen. And first, I did not know what to expect going into this book. I really hadn't heard anything about her since I've been so much out of the literary scene for so many years. I picked up the book because when I was looking at the different workshop leaders for the conference I'm going to, I looked at her reputation and the way she spoke, and it seemed like a class I'd be really comfortable in. I wanted to be in a class that had some diversity and with a teacher that wrote literary fiction. And her what I'd heard, what I'd read of some of her reviews were things that I want to strive for in my own work, things like delicacy and honesty in my fiction. And so I picked up her two novels and I decided I was going to read them before the conference so that I could just get an idea of her writing style and just kind of get in the mood for the conference. The experience I had last night was not what I expected at all. And I need to unpack this book. Desperately need to unpack it because I'm alternating. My emotions are up and down, up and down, up and down. Um, so I read the first page when I first got it last week, but I didn't go any further because I have a bunch of other books and I was editing, and with everything going on with my private life, my personal life has just imploded. I just didn't want to start another book. And that page has been haunting me all week. And so I finally picked it up and I told myself I'm just going to read a few pages, just get a feel for it. And I couldn't put it down. Around 2 a.m., I was 100 pages into the book and I, I, I needed a break. And so I put it down and I was going to go to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about the book and processing the book. And eventually, after like an hour, I gave up and I just got up and finished reading it. This book has had such a huge emotional resonance for me. Uh, and as a writer, I'm almost embarrassed to say I'm almost at a loss for words. Um, it's made me really look forward to the conference, but also it's made me think about how my life has been structured as an artist and some of the weird decisions I've made through my life. And I've looked back and thought, why did I do that? And I'm not going to cry during this freaking book review. That would just be stupid. So, for anyone that doesn't like spoilers, don't go any further because I'm probably going to spoil it because I'm just too emotional about it right now to really be able to think coherently about what's a spoiler and what's not. This book follows a group of students who are in a really prestigious poetry writing program, really prestigious like MFA program. And the workshop is led by this woman, Miranda, who's very mysterious and fairly cold and just on the surface seems very detached. And it really explores the development of three poets, but in particular two poets, and how she's affected them in their development. The first poet is Barnard, and he is quiet, he's religious, and he's eccentric, and he takes the path of solitude to master his craft. The other poet, the main one, his name is Roman, and he takes the path of wanting to be the best and fame and prestigious teaching jobs. And at one point, both of them are in love with Miranda, and how that experience changes their lives, um, how it follows them throughout their lives. This weird mentoring, slightly dysfunctional relationship And it really spoke to the sacrifices for art, for really mastering anything. You know, you see it with people in sports, actors, painters, CEOs. In order to be the best at something, a lot of times you have to sacrifice a lot. And I think it hit me so hard because this week has been extraordinarily tough for me. Um, you know, when I was young, I was an artist. I knew I was an artist. There was never any question that I was going to be an artist. I went to school for fashion design because that was a practical major for me. And then I quit and traveled up and down the coast and went on tons of madcap adventures, always with the thought in the back of my head that I was going to be a writer and that I wanted to experience the world. I had to experience everything once. And in the process, I roughened myself up pretty freaking good. And I've frequently said that I'm single because I'm unmarriageable. And part of that is because I roughened myself up pretty good. Like I went through some stuff that makes it difficult, you know, to date because people look at you and they're like, you did what? When? You know, and because I went through so much and because I was so open and I made so many different types of friends and the way I see the world is so different, it's often been hard for me to find somebody who can embrace the way I see the world and not be turned off by it or not have it turn really dysfunctional. Um, you know, pretty much the only people I've ever been with who fully understood me were artists. And I can't be in relationships with other artists. It's just not a healthy spot for me. So it's better if I'm single. And you know, when I got pregnant, I was almost relieved because it was like a break from this path that I felt was going to end in early death. I didn't think I was going to survive being a young artist. You know, I sold my camera and I stopped painting and I stopped all art for 10 years, you know, and over 10 years, probably closer to 15, because I wasn't sure I was strong enough to be a young artist. And as I read this book, I realized I was right. In my 20s, I couldn't have made that sacrifice. And as I've been planning and thinking about this weird period that I'm approaching, this you know, no more children in the house, empty nest thing that's going to be happening very soon, I'm realizing that I am capable of making that sacrifice now. And it is a sacrifice I want to make. And it is a big one. And as I read the story, it was so truthful and so honest, and the struggle was so purely expressed. Um, at times, I just felt this deep yearning that feels like an empty knot in my chest. And it's a yearning for what? I can't really say. It's a yearning, I think it's a yearning to express something purely, as if such a thing can be done. But I think this book showed me that it can. Um, you know, I can see how someone reading this book who hasn't had that experience may read this and find the characters maybe overly emotional and just like really self-absorbed. But when I read this, it strikes like a really honest tone and it touches on so much, you know, and I think I really Lucy really resonated with me. The whole like getting married and having kids and then not being able to write, and then once her kids are grown, getting that divorce and then finally being able to write. There's this sense of to write on such a level that it's hard to be taking care of anybody else, which sounds horrible. And I don't think it's universal. I think it's a specific, I think perhaps it's a specific type of writer that really does need to set everything aside and dive in. I don't think it's healthy, but I think it's necessary for a specific type of art. Um, the writing is amazing, you know, but it didn't make me feel inadequate. It made me feel hopeful, you know. Often when I'm writing, I get excited over one sentence that says exactly what I wanted to say. And when you read a book that has a lot of those sentences, I can see how that could make you feel discouraged, like, oh, I'll never get to that point. But for me, it made me feel really hopeful that it's possible to express something so honestly. Uh, Another thing it made me think of, the book, it's really funny. On Scribophile, I posted a thread asking for referrals for books that are kind of like Waiting for Godot-ish, where there's like two characters in a confined area with no other characters, so that I can read them and really see how that kind of situation is handled, because a lot of the things that you use to pace a book and keep readers interested are kind of taken away from that scenario. And I would like to start on this project soon. It's a project I didn't think I was going to start on for probably another 10 years, but I need to start it. My heart won't let me not start it. And I've always known that this project wasn't going to be a very long book. But it was funny because in the thread someone said, "Oh, this other book, you need to buy this, you need to read it. It's really, really short. It's like a novella." That's what they said. I think it must have been like a science fiction reader, because I got the book and it was like 350 pages, which to me is a longer book. It's like an average size book. And I realized that a lot of my favorite literary novels are actually quite short. This book is like 200 pages. And, you know, a lot of the classics are not very long. There's a few classics that are super long. Those are the ones you remember in high school. But a lot of the best literature, actually not very long books. And I realized that some of my problems with some of the books I've been reading is that they're just too long. There's so much extraneous crap that can be cut out that takes away from the basic essence of the book that I get frustrated with it. I liked Middlesex, uh, but there's a lot of books, you know, when you're talking about dense literature, I like literature that makes me think. When you're reading literature that makes you read on that active of a level, after about 400 pages, my brain just gets tired. It's exhausting. And I think it's because I am reading so closely, but I also think it's because there's this literary convention that has kind of happened, you know, from like the 80s on, where books have gotten really long. And, you know, whereas like Catch 22 is like 40,000 words. You know, Animal Farm it's a novella. The Great Gatsby, tiny, tiny novel. When you look at all these tiny, tiny novels, the big novels were the exceptions. And I feel like the kind of writer I want to be the kind of writer that writes something delicately and sparsely and elegantly, and that doesn't have a lot of extraneous. I don't want to pad stuff. I don't want to have someone read my book and then yawn and skim forward to see how much farther they've got to go. I don't want them to get caught up in descriptions and then forget what's being described. And I feel like a lot of the books I've been reading lately have a lot of extraneous in them. You know, books I've been reading within like the last 5-10 years. There's a lot of padding, a lot of padding. And it was refreshing to read something that literally had no padding. You know, there's two words that I prize above all else in literature. And the first is precision. Um, I want to be precise in how I write. And when I read books that are precise in their language and precise in their theme, and just the writing is with purpose, I'll find these moments where I'm like, oh, you know, and when I'm reading and I get that moment of just wow, and I have to reread the sentence because it's so perfect. I want that. I want to experience that in my own novel. And the other word is the sense that the story has nothing extraneous. That every word, every sentence, every character, everything has a purpose in it. And that they're all meaningfully chosen. I guess it's a form of precision. When I think of precise, I think of the words and language, but it is just another reflection of precision. And I feel like this book was very precise. So it's made me really look forward to the writing group, because I know that the project that I'm taking is not precise. It is one step away from a rough draft. I literally just cleaned up the first 7,000 words so that I wouldn't be embarrassed from all the typos. And that's what I'm going to be working on in class. And it's rough. It's really rough. And it's going to be fun to cut it down and to make it precise. And this book made me excited to edit my novel because it reminded me of what my purpose in editing is. I have these 2 books, and I put off their editing, and I go and I edit short stories, and I write short stories, and I read poetry, and I do research, and then I go back and I look at these stories, and I edit 1 page, and then I set it down and I don't return. And I realize it's because I've been looking at the editing as like this big thing that needs to be done, this big unwieldy thing. And I forgot that editing, it's not going to be any different than it is when I edit my short story. Meaning, when I write my rough draft, when I create my outline, I am creating the wire frame of a sculpture. And when I write my rough draft, I am molding big chunks of clay onto that skeleton. And when I edit, I am perfecting. I am polishing. I am finding the shadows and the highlights and the textures, and I'm cutting away, and I'm revealing something that was always there and was never there. And so, yeah, there's been a few books in my life that I feel like have had a significant effect on how I write and how I read. And last night, I added one more. All is forgotten, nothing is lost. I really love this book. Like, really, really love this book. Ciao.